Welcome back. Thank you for staying with Morning Express. Good morning from wherever you're tuning in from on this 29th day of November. A big day right here on Standard Group PLC, and we'll get to tell you all about it as we get to redefine how we bring you news, how we bring you content, a converged newsroom. A lot more details will be coming up later on during the day on this auspicious event we'll be having at the Standard Group offices. But it's also been covered inside the Standard edition today. Standard Group's new major step, you can expect that and plenty more in today's edition of the Standard, Kenya's bold newspaper, particularly the Daily Nation, covering today's major developments. And right before the break, we're talking about the new variant, the Omicron variant, which was first discovered in South Africa, and we've seen a couple of world countries sort of react to the spread of this particular variant. Right here in Kenya, no travel restrictions in place, that's according to the PS of Health, Mochache. But even as we push for more vaccination, ramping up the numbers in terms of that particular goal, 10 million by the end of this particular year. In studio, I'm joined by a well-abled panel: Professor Mohamed Elmi, governance expert; Joseph Kioko, political analyst; and Kidi Mwaga, who's a lawyer as well. Prof, I'd like to begin with you on this one. Right before the break, we're talking about the variant and perhaps how exactly we need to strengthen our health sector right here in the country, whether the county level or at the national level as well. We rarely give the government a pat on the back. Have we done well so far, irrespective of the minor challenges in terms of acquiring vaccines and dispersing it amongst the population? Well, what's your take?
Thank you, Rogers. I think you have correctly said Kenyans are not very good in complementing the good things that are happening in our country. Having said that, you know, this is not the first time that we're having another variant. We had the Indian, and we had many others. And by the nature of the virus, there will be mutation. So as an epidemiologist, I think the country has done very well. But there are three things that we must really strengthen. One is how to increase vaccination, and this requires massive logistics. We have massive disparity within our country. Right now, Northeastern is facing a very serious drought.
Okay. So
how, where will be the priority of the harder, the camel harder? Is it to have vaccination of COVID, or look for pasture and water for the dying animals? I think your guess is as good as mine. So what the government must do is to create a necessary strategy so that this vaccine can reach the people where they are. And the government has done several campaigns. We have done the polio campaigns, we have done measles campaigns, and we know the strategy to do. Community health strategy is the way forward. So we must use the community health workers. So for these people to be effective, there must be strong health systems. The health systems include the infrastructure. The infrastructure in the event of you require curative services. There are two components to COVID. One is the preventive, and the other one is the curative. So all of them must be strengthened, and there are health systems. There are 6 steps. They are called building blocks of health systems. And the critical to this is human resource. Do we have the right trained people? Do we have the right, in the event that there will be a massive infection, our hospitals prepared? Do we have the right doctors and nurses? Do we have oxygen? And you see, the other thing is that restrictions have not worked. And we know there are stories that people have been buying the COVID certificate. This actually only enhances corruption within the system. And it has no really medical benefit. So the key issue here is we must do the way we did for the Indian variant. The Kenya did, our country we did, and you see we have more trade. We have more business in India than actually in South Africa, because they are medical tourists. We have massive Indian connection as far as historical events are concerned.
Okay.
We have many things that we can be able to do. But key issue is that we must work seriously on the preventive component of COVID and the curative.
As well, even as we strengthen our health structures. Wakili, as you give us your brief take on this new COVID variant and how we are supposed to combat it, you brought up an interesting fact, and I beg to ask you if you're fully vaccinated, because taking a look at the reports that you can easily buy a COVID-19 certificate right now, that the Ministry of Health workers who are working in collusion with unscrupulous, business people to make this COVID-19 certificate easily accessible. As less as 1,000 Kenya shillings, you can have it. That's not a good step. It's not a step in the right direction, yeah?
Sad. Sad. Jesse, one thing that I must say about the emergence of the new variant is that it is something that is anticipated. Because taking a new shape of a virus taking a new shape is normal, is the order of the day.
Yeah, it mutates, yeah.
Yes, it mutates. So, but then to this extent, we had anticipated that our people would develop herd immunity due to exposure when COVID first came in. To this extent, I would say that numbers having gone down, at least looking at the statistics released by the Ministry of Health, there are two things that could be playing out. One, could be true that our people have obtained herd immunity. But then herd immunity in itself is not enough. So that the best way to then be able to ensure that we continue keeping numbers down is by ensuring that we massively vaccinate the adult population. The question is, how do we ensure that we vaccinate the adult population? I think the government has attempted to teach the population on the advantages of being vaccinated. But then there are pessimists, and then there are people who are also just generally careless, who have refused to take this initiative. And the government has done something very good with the vaccination, as opposed to the PCR test. At the vaccination, when you go, your details are taken and then keyed in. And then the day you take your first shot, you receive a notification on when you're receiving the second shot.
Okay.
Then when you receive the second shot, your certificate for being fully vaccinated is digitally generated. And I think, therefore, government should indicate that for people to access government services, then you must produce certificate of double vaccination. Thank you very much.
Okay, Prof, and back to you on this. We saw the government's reaction, a sort of a strong man approach when it comes to making sure the whole public is inoculated, mentioning that is it by December 21st, in case you're not fully vaccinated, a couple of issues when it comes to government services, you'll be locked out, Is this the best approach in terms of sensitizing the population to put vaccination first, Prof?
Rogers, if I build on what the lawyer was saying, first, herd immunity is gained by the percentage of vaccination. If we have 90% vaccination, for example, then we know that the 10% are protected by the 90. That is the principle of herd immunity. So if we are, what percentage are we in the country today? It's not even 25%.
Yes.
So in essence, we are very far from gaining herd immunity. And public health, from the history, we have heard that draconian laws have not been effective in prevention of epidemics. What is effective is the people must never be coerced. They must be willing. They must see the benefit of vaccination by themselves. So I think the concept of bringing draconian laws first is against the human right in terms of public health is concerned. So you see, the government has a responsibility to bring the vaccine to you. If the vaccine cannot, you have heard of the saying that if the mountain cannot come to Muhammad, then Muhammad goes to the mountain. So it is the responsibility of the government to ensure that vaccines are available. So before we bring laws, have we reached every Kenyan? Is vaccine available? Is it affordable? Is it accessible? If this question is no, then these rules will only actually accelerate corruption.
Okay.
Because you see, if I want to go to a supermarket and somebody is asking for a vaccine certificate, what must I do? And it's only 10,000, 1,000 shillings away from you. So you see, the curfews have not worked.
Yeah.
You remember, people were still drinking in the pubs. They were traveling, as long as you have 1,000 shillings. So, and we know that our country has problems of corruption. So we should not do anything that will enhance corruption as far as, and you see, epidemics must be looked at differently.
Okay.
This is not a crime. We are not looking at robbers. We are looking at people who need their health and the responsibility. If you look at the Constitution and the law is here, it is the government to provide the utmost health services available. So if you have not provided the utmost, then how can you say that you are going to bring rules and laws and regulations and policies that are detrimental to the rights? And you see, health is a right.
Okay.
Yes, health is a right, and it is the responsibility of the government. So I think these draconian policies, definitely somebody will go to court, and it will be hopefully, it will be.
If they haven't already,
if they haven't,
we had talk of that. But anyway, speaking of draconian laws, let's speak of the enforcers, Kioko, briefly. Even as you conjoin with what Prof and Wakili mentioned, we're looking at a case, and this was featured prominently in last week's papers and also today on page 7 of the Daily Nation, on how a certain group of police officers actually got lower pay. And that definitely affected them in terms of their moral boost when it comes to dangerous assignments. That is usually the order of the day. And it's such a critical time, considering we have a terror alert in the country, and finding out that certain officers have been reduced from a basic pay of 59,000 all the way to 32,000. The House Alliance been slashed to 9,000 from 24,000. This definitely leaves an egg on the face of the Inspector General. Of course, he's agreed to look into the welfare, but this is more reactionary than preventionary, don't you think?
I think one of the problems with this Uhuru's government is that people shoot and then aim later. Yeah? So you find the CS Kagwe has made a statement, then you ask yourself, was there a thought process in making this statement, or is it something you picked somewhere and you had in Britain, people, this is the approach? Yet in reality is, you've not vaccinated 50% of the country. You've not vaccinated 60 or even 70% of the country. You don't have the vaccines reaching those numbers. How do you tell people that unless you're vaccinated, you won't get services, government services, which are services due to you by right? Now, what that creates, like Prof was saying, is a rent-seeking opportunity. Then you say that's now health. Then you come to police service. I mean, basic HR. You cannot deny me my right unless you've sacked me. Now, once you've negotiated with me and told me that my salary is 60,000, for you to downgrade it even to 59,999 shillings, for you to downgrade it, it must be through an agreement of sort.
Yeah.
It cannot be a unilateral action from the employer against the employee. That can't happen because there's a CBA or there's a mechanism in which this amount was gotten to. So now, we are living at a time where we saw 3 prisoners escape from committee. Terror alerts are high. We are moving into a general elections. These are graduate officers. Now, these are graduate officers. In part of creating police reforms into this country, there was an approach of saying, let's move away from the D-plus tall, sharp teeth approach to recruitment and look for graduates who can now soften the face of police officers to Kenya, who know how to deal with people.
Okay.
So now you go to them and unilaterally slash salary. And when this thing comes through social media, it's not coming from internal conversation. It came through social media, and then you react and say, no, we are going to look into it. You should not have done it from the first instance.
In the first place, okay.
What you're basically doing is you are demoralizing the police force. Now you are demoralizing somebody who has access to a gun. You are demoralizing somebody who has access to bullet. You are demoralizing somebody who knows security arrangements within this country. Basically, by that act, you've put all of our security at risk. Now that's the problem with this government. You shoot first, then you aim late. Maybe the government did not have was having a cash flow problem, and it chose to pick the list of the society that might not scream. So it went to the police officers to meet a certain deficit. So you allow rumors and innuendos to come into fore that this government is broke. For it to meet its recurrent obligations. Let me take this amount of money.
All right.
Which are the people who will not be affected? This one. Because you cannot touch teachers, there is not. You cannot touch defense forces, you cannot touch these other people. You know, so my approach really
All right.
is that from a HR perspective, the government needs to be very coherent in its approach to issues. This bullish attitude doesn't do it well. And
Prof, you might agree with Kyoko, because even the NPS leadership is definitely trying to find a solution to that problem. But looking at it at a bigger scale, we had a couple of jailbreaks recently. I know this doesn't fall under NPS, this is a prison warders specifically, but low morale and corruption have been blamed for the jailbreaks that have occurred within our prison institutions in the country. Page 10 of the Daily Nation breaks that down for our viewers. But it begs the question, should we look into the welfare of our security officers, of our reservists, of those working as prison warders as well?
Roger, I think this has brought 3 issues. One is that there is meritocracy. Being a graduate, in my understanding, is a fellow who have a degree from a recognized university. So you know how long it takes to get a degree in the university. And you get degrees because you get skills, you get knowledge, and all of that must have reciprocity. You must be rewarded for your effort. And so now if you are brought to the same scale with fellow with a D minus, so you can imagine the morale of this particular person. Where the other thing is that security is not an issue that requires, you know, a very light debate. We have seen from what we have seen in the papers that their fellows, because of this effect, their salary is in the negative, 7,000 Kenyan shillings. So if a soldier or a policeman is working on a negative salary, this guy has a family, he may have taken bank loans, he may have taken cooperative loans, and he may have relatives, he's probably paying school fees for his children. What is the net effect? And I can tell you this, having been an army colonel, that this is a serious detrimental problem to this nation. The other thing is that, which has always been in the fore, is that the police have been leading in the corruption list. The institutions that these fellows who assess level of corruption in the Transparency International in our country, the police has always been leading. So you can see a policeman now who has been taking bribes and now is on the negative. What do you expect from him what will happen to the matatus? So, and we know generally our country, corruption is a major problem. And there are 2 ways or many ways to deal with the corruption, but the major way to deal with the corruption is deal with the corruptions that are visible. One of the corruption ways that are visible is the roadside. The police. Every day when, Roger, you travel from your home to your place of work, you can see a matatu tout or a driver always greeting a policeman. So we close a blind eye, all of us in this country. So if a terror suspect, Rogers, can leave committee maximum. And it takes, I think, did they say, I was reading the paper yesterday, is it 10 hours or 15 hours for Matiangi to know? Then this tells you that there is a serious security breach. What if these guys were not found? And they were found because of the community effort, community policing. The people who contributed largely are the common people. There was one lady, according to the report yesterday. So I think in a summary, the government must relook in these issues seriously. And they should never compromise security within our borders.
All right, Prof. Well noted. Kidi, I'll give you a brief chance to perhaps give your take on that in a moment of finality.
Thank you very much.
Briefly.
Just one thing that is does not sit well with us as a country is that we have consistently let down those who have given so much to us. The teachers, the police, and then generally those people who ensure that the wheel of progress is turning. So that today, as we speak, as my brother Kyoko rightly put it, an employer cannot wake up one day and unilaterally slashes the salary of an employee and without explanation. And then, I mean, even how the IG has responded to it is, for lack of a better word, lackadaisical. As a country and as we head into the next general elections, the issue of security is paramount. And then it must not be handled in such a knee-jerk reaction, including messing up with the salaries of our of members of the disciplined forces.
True.
So, to say the least, the slashing of salaries was, among other things, very unlawful. And of course, the IG and the NPSC erred big time. Thank you.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We'll have to end today's deliberations on that particular note, but of course a lot more covered in today's dailies. Make sure you grab yourself a copy back at home. In studio we're joined by Joseph Kyoko, political analyst. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Professor Mohammed Elmi, governance expert. Is it epidemiologist? How do you say that word?
Epidemiologist.
That way. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good one. And Kidi Mwaga, who's a lawyer as well. We appreciate your input right here on Morning Express. And as I hinted earlier, it's a big day for Standard Group as it is. We'll be launching our converged newsroom later on and the new look KTN News. So a lot to talk about the modern era newsroom. Later on, right after this break, we'll definitely delve deeper, not just into that significant moment in Standard Group's history, but equally what other media houses can do in order to put facts first, in order to deal with the digital disruptions that are orchestrated with the current day we live in. Stay with us, you're watching Morning Express.